Hi everyone, Ashley here with another video on the Penguin Palace Stamps YouTube channel. Today I have a video showing how to use the new dies from Penguin Palace Stamps. These are the Dots Meets Dashes rectangle dies, and this is a really cool set of dies which I'll show you right now. So without further ado, let's get into it. The Dots Meets Dashes dies come in two sets. You have the large set and the small set, and these are rectangle overlay dies. And what this means is that they each cut out a rectangle shape in all these different sizes. The largest set has a die, the largest one, that cuts out the size of a card base, so that's 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inches. And each die cuts out an incrementally less amount. So if you combine the large and the small sets, you'll get every single size that you need. The small set has a larger die that cuts out just under the size of a card front, so it would be 4 inches by 5 1/4, and that's the largest die in the small set. So I'm just using one of the dies from the set. This is actually the second or third largest one in the large set, and this is just cutting out a white rectangle out of a piece of white cardstock. Then I'm going to use an embossing technique with the die. So I'm using a smaller size of the Dots Meet Dashes rectangle die, and instead of cutting it, I'm going to emboss with it. This will leave the really cool Dots Meet Dashes pattern in the paper as an embossed pattern rather than having it cut out. So for this, I just opened my cutting sandwich to that first tab there, but you can play around with your machine on what settings will work. I then put an embossing mat down, and then on top of that, I'm putting the paper and then the die. And having the embossing mat under the paper really allows the die to kind of squish into that embossing mat and emboss rather than cut, so it creates this soft surface for the die. I can then put the cutting plate on top and run it through my machine. And you'll see that when we take it out, you get the embossed pattern, so it doesn't actually cut through the paper, it only embosses, and it leaves that really neat Dots Meet Dashes pattern in the paper, kind of inset from the outside. And I really like how this accentuates that Dots Meet Dashes pattern. Try saying that 10 times fast. Okay, so I've gone ahead off camera and cut out some pieces of pattern paper that I'm going to use for this card. And I just used a patterned paper pack from Stampin' Up! With these chevrons that you can see in the top left corner there, and then some gray and white dots. I'm stamping the sentiment onto a strip of the gray and white dot patterned paper just with some black ink here using my Mini Misty. And this sentiment comes from the stamp set, another new one from Penguin Palace Stamps called The More We Get Together. And this stamp set has a lot of really cute ocean-themed stamps. The sentiment that I chose says, "You have my seal of approval." I've also got this seal with a little thumbs up that I had already stamped and colored and cut, actually in a previous video, and I never ended up using it. So if you want to go check out one of my earlier videos on the More We Get Together stamp set, you'll see me color in that cute little image. And because I didn't use it on that card, I figured it'd be great to use on this card. So I cut out this piece of pattern paper with the largest Dots Meet Dashes rectangle die, so it still has that fun pattern around the edge, but it fits the entire card base, and I'm just gluing it down to the card base with some liquid glue. I'm just really going around the edges to make sure that that pattern paper piece is stuck down to the card base there, and I just used a piece of white paper to make the card base. I now have that white insert piece that I cut out with the Dots Meet Dashes rectangle die and then did my embossing to inset that pattern as well. And I have a piece of fun foam that I cut out to be slightly smaller than this piece. And I'm going to stick it on using this double-sided tape. So I'm just lining the whole thing with some strips of double-sided tape on both sides. And then I'm going to stick it down to the back of that white panel. And this is just going to give it some nice elevation and really have it stick up from that pattern paper piece on the card. So I can pull back the release paper from the double-sided tape here and stick that whole panel right in the middle of the card front here. And I'm just taking my time to make sure that it's all nicely lined up, because the thing about double-sided tape is that once it's stuck, it's stuck. There's no moving it. It's not like liquid glue. So I stuck that right down into the middle of the card front, and now I can just line up my images with how I want them to be on the card. And I wanted this sentiment strip to have some little banner edges, so I'm just using my tried and true technique by cutting a little slit down the middle and then coming in from the corners to make that little banner edge. And I'm doing that on both sides so that it's even and symmetrical. . Once the little banner edges are cut, I can then line that sentiment strip down on the front of the card, just near the top there, horizontally. And then I wanted that little image to just be sort of right in the middle near the bottom. I decided to keep the images on this card simple because I really wanted the eye to be drawn to those fun dots meet stashes patterns that you get from the die cutting of the edges as well as the embossing that I did. So I wanted the rest of the elements of the card just to be really simple. So I'm just using some liquid glue to stick down this sentiment strip. Sorry that it's kind of going off the edge of the screen there, but I really wanted to make sure that I was lining it up properly. I'm then taking some foam squares and popping them onto the back of this little seal image so that it has some extra dimension and really pops out. Because it is the only image kind of going on the front of this card, I wanted to kind of make it seem a little bit extra special. And then finally, I can use some liquid glue, just a little tiny dab, to put on the back of this heart. And again, this is a heart that comes from that same from that same stamp set, and I had already cut it out and colored it previously. So that's it. This is actually quite a simple card, and it's really easy to come together, so it'd be a great design for mass-producing cards. And you could always use a different little image and some different pattern paper on each one to give them a little bit of unique variety. So thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you here again next time. Thanks for watching. Bye!